Welcome into episode 229 of the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball and recruiting podcast on the growing KSR Podcast Network. Sources Say is, as always, presented by our good friends at Justice Dental. Visit one of their two Lexington locations. It's on Blazer Parkway and Wellington Way by scheduling an appointment online at justicedental.com or by calling 859-543-0700. You can even send a text message to one of their friendly team members at the same number to ask a question or make an appointment. Now is a great time to schedule your dental cleaning. Dr. Thompson, Dr. Justice, and their team strive to provide you with good oral health in a comfortable environment. The Justice Dental team looks forward to seeing you soon. I am your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio. Very happy to be joined once again by KSR's own Zack Geoghegan, who unfortunately was sitting right next to me as we watched whatever the hell that was at Rupp Arena on Tuesday night. Tuesday night. Zack, thank you for joining us, and I'm sorry that you have to be a part of this.
Anything to just hang out with my friend Jack and Steven in the back there for 45 minutes, and anything to just do that. It doesn't matter what happens on the floor for me, You're
a good liar. I do appreciate that at least. Zack, we are contractually obligated to break down this loss, even though I would rather listen to elevator music to hell than relive this game. It was terrible. 71-68 loss against the worst team in the SEC. Well, they were the worst team in the SEC until this game, until Kentucky emerged as that number one spot. So we were both there side by side. Let's just give them the feel. Let's give them the vibe of the St. Peter's side of things, where it's like we see the inevitable kind of coming down the track and feel like, man, is this actually going to happen? Are we really going to lose this game? No, there's no way, right? No, but really? The clock's ticking and we're getting pretty close. I don't know if we did it. We sure did. So set the scene, Zack, from Rupp Arena on that miserable Tuesday night.
Well, it started out with probably, maybe 30% of the stadium being filled about 10 minutes before tip. But to Rupp Arena's credit, they definitely filled it out and honestly almost willed the entire team back in. But yeah, as for the actual, once the game got going, it only took a couple of South Carolina made threes for us to kind of look over and be like, yeah, this might not be Kentucky's night. And it quickly got out to a terrible start. I think it was 15-2, maybe something like that to begin.
Was.
And then Boo Birds were starting to come out. We heard a couple of those. Obviously, you had the whole Cal to Texas sign thing. For me personally, I don't know how you felt, but kind of it was in the first half initially where I kind of had the feel like, I don't think this is going to happen. South Carolina was just hitting enough tough shots to keep Kentucky at bay, and Kentucky just had, even if some of those shots didn't fall, I feel pretty confident that South Carolina would have found a way to get the offensive rebound and put it back in anyways for a score. It was just that kind of night. Oscar was talking about it. He said the word fight at least 50 times in a 10-minute, and I'm not even kidding, it was 50 times in a 10-minute interview talking about how they needed to show more fight and all that. And it was clear even from where we were standing that the vibes were off. There was some, maybe some, not necessarily yelling or arguing, but some chirping between some of the players and coaches on the bench. Obviously, you had Kaysen's thing where he went out in the game with back spasms, what UK labeled it as. And, he didn't, if he plays and if Jacob Toppin plays, who knows, maybe UK just wins that game easily. But that didn't happen. And this was still a game that UK should have just easily walked out of. But they had to rely on, guys like CJ Frederick and Antonio Reeves getting mid-range jumpers just to keep them in the game. So, yeah, for me personally, it was quick. I felt like this game, especially by halftime, I was convinced that Kentucky was not going to find a way to come back. And when the whole team came out from the locker room and was shooting around and going through the motions, which we've seen a couple of times this year, it just the sense is you had the St. Peter's vibe, but you had it well before the inevitable actually happened.
Zack, I think for the first time, I saw the chemistry issues and the body language and those types of concerns, dating back to early in the season and just thinking like, man, I just don't know if they just love each other. Like, I just don't get that sense that they're, huge cheerleaders of one another. You don't, Damian Collins catches a lob and throws it down, a guy who needs confidence more than just about anybody on the team. And there's not like a rush out to the floor to go pick him up and give him a hug and go, hell yeah, dude. Like, we need that. That's what we need from you. Like, you don't get that sense. And that's been an issue for a while. And, but that's just, maybe that's just not the team. That's maybe that's just not a lot of outspoken guys, whatever. Like, you can kind of chalk that up as a thing. And then you start getting the bad body language. Then you start seeing the chemistry, like you say, that the chirping back and forth and the weird back and forth with the coaching staff and the players, and the side eye from Jacob Toppin to Cal at Missouri, and those types of things. And you're like, something feels a little off here. And then you get last night, where Zach, I think for the first time, it kind of hit me that I just think this locker room is lost. I genuinely do. And I know it's easy to say, oh, well, that's what losing does and those types of things. But Zach, I think that team did not have any heart from the opening tip. And I don't know if there's anybody on this team that you can single out as a guy that for certain that the heart is going to come from. And that's my biggest concern. Is I genuinely do think the pieces are all there, and we've talked about it just not being a cohesive group, and maybe it's kind of square peg and round hole type situation where they're just not fitting well together. It's not just a cohesive unit. But above all else, I don't think this team has the heart necessary to make a run, and that's my biggest concern. They went into Tuscaloosa, Zach, last weekend, and had no shot. They were absolutely terrified from the opening tip. This was not a situation like out at Fog Allen last year, where the Kentucky team walked into Lawrence, walked in there in Lawrence, and like laughed at the crowd and said, "Yeah, I like how excited they are now, but we're going to go kick their ass right now." And they did. They went out and beat them by 30, and that was kind of the statement win of the season, and that's where everything kind of kept trekking forward for that team. This team went into Tuscaloosa. Well, first it started, Gonzaga got run out the gym there. The neutral site games, that was, those were what they were. But then the next, true road game at Missouri, the first kind of like, okay, well, it's SEC schedule's back. We'll be able to figure something out and all that. And they get run off the floor there. The mentality is just not there with this team. The fight is not there with this team. And I just don't see how that gets fixed. That's a mentality thing. That's a thing between the ears thing. So if they can be as physically gifted as you want them to be, but I don't see a mentality fix anytime soon coming, Zach.
Yeah, I think it's not a talent issue. I don't think. I mean, Kentucky has talented players. I think that we can kind of, confirm, like, they have great guys. Casey Wallace is still a future lottery pick. Oscar's still the reigning national player of the year, no matter, what his defense is kind of looking like right now. He still is, at least putting up points and grabbing rebounds and stuff. But yeah, that clip that Steven played there a couple times, I remember watching that exact incident, and it was an isolated thing. That was really the only time I actually saw like the actual chirping happening. But you saw Xavier kind of chatting it up with Chin Coleman, and Oscar kind of had a little whatever he says right there to one of the assistants or grad assistants. So there's clearly just some sort of disconnect between everyone, and it boiled over in the post-game press conference with Oscar. I'll reference that again, where he's begging his players to fight at this point. And Oscar didn't really fight against Alabama, and he kind of admitted that himself. And after watching the tape, he did a little bit better against South Carolina, but even he's still not. It doesn't look like he's still 100% into these games at times. So I don't know if you're about to inject.
And I want to, I do want to reference that, because Oscar, I think, is the last person right now who needs to be stepping up and saying things like, my teammates aren't fighting. If they're not fighting, then we need to put the walk-ons in and things like that. That's something you do against St. Peter's, where you have 30 and 16, and you're like, dude, I am dying over here. Can somebody, for the love of God, help me? Because I am alone. I'm on an island by myself right now, trying to will this team to win, and nobody is there with me. Put in the walk-ons. I don't care. I'll play with Brendan Canada, Kareem Watkins, Walker Horn, and Grant Darbyshire as the four perimeter guys while I'm down low. I don't care. Just put somebody in that's going to fight and play winning basketball like me. That's not the case. Oscar Tshiebwe right now is getting played off the floor on both ends. Right now, the blueprint is out. First, it was Mick Cronin at UCLA who kind of created the blueprint and said, we know what his biggest struggles are offensively. Why don't we just attack those? And that's where people were kind of like, oh, he struggles at this, and this. We've talked about that extensively till we're blue in the face, what his offensive struggles are with the balls in his hands and how it hurts with shot clock situations and things like that. We don't need to dive into that. And then this past week down in Tuscaloosa, Nate Oates absolutely calls him out and says, we saw some stuff on film where we said, oh, he is really, really bad defending ball screens. We could get him in pick and roll situations and absolutely cook him. And that's exactly how it unfolded. So you had Nate Oates attacking him with what the blueprint that this hook 'em horns was definitely not on purpose, by the way. But that's definitely something to discuss down the road. But we had, Nate Oates attacking what Mick Cronin kind of solved and exposed offensively. And then defensively, he said, this film shows that he's terrible defending ball screens and in the pick and roll. Let's attack that. And it was Oscar's worst game as a Wildcat by far. Nothing has ever come close to that. And then you have South Carolina head coach Lamont Paris, who
first-year head coach.
Good for him. He has a terrible roster, and it's going to be a rebuild of all rebuilds. Thank God he got the number one recruit in America, because that team would, as terrible as they are right now, they'd be the bottom of the barrel of all of college basketball. I mean, they still are, but it's somehow even worse if they didn't have the number one player in America. So God bless him. He has a whole rebuild ahead looking for him. But even he, at the post-game press conference podium, said, yeah, we saw what Alabama did to him, and we were like, why don't we just do that? And I've been concerned with that and confused, Zach, because we saw Auburn do that with Walker Kessler, where Walker destroyed him in the pick and roll. And I kind of sat there and I thought, oh crap, other teams are going to see this and like use that to kill the Wildcats moving forward. Because if you take Oscar out, then what the hell does Kentucky have outside of him? That was my biggest concern. And nobody really capitalized on that to close out the season. So I was like, maybe they did. But then here comes Nate Oates really capitalizing on that. And now Lamont Paris. So now the blueprint's out, the game plan's out there. You know how to take Oscar Tshiebwe out the game. And now at this point, I'm very concerned if this is such an Oscar-centric team that now that he's getting played off the floor, where the hell do you go?
And I really don't think, like, some people will kind of, reference that maybe Oscar's just not as good as he was last year. His numbers are slightly down. He's actually shooting better from the field, I believe. But if we want to talk realistically about it, I don't think Oscar is any different than what he was last year. Everyone is just, like you said, with the Auburn game. That's like something that I was looking back at too. The blueprint has always been there for how to beat Oscar. It's just after a year, all these coaches have so much film that they know how to do it now. So it's easy. It's out there. There's enough film out there. And what's even more concerning is that all these coaches know that UK is not going to do anything differently. And it just seems like they're just going to let Oscar kind of sit out there. Like there was times in the game yesterday where Oscar was just getting beat one-on-one straight line drives, like not necessarily, in the pick and rolls. Like he's just, and we've known this, he's not exactly quick on his feet. Like he never was quick on his feet last year. Like he's good when he has, the ball in the post and he's got good footwork, but in terms of actually, defending on ball and things like that, and just kind of knowing where to be, he's not very good at it. And, that's not necessarily something that should just kill this team, though, because as the coaches should try and find ways to, counter that or put him in situations that can that are just maximize his ability out there, because clearly he is a little slow-footed and you have to have him out there, because if you don't, you're going to get dog walked by 26 points like Alabama did. So I had one other point I was going to say right there, but I forget. So you go ahead.
But yes, it's just one of those things that when you have Oscar at the podium saying things like that, it's like, dude, there's already the rift. Everybody knows that there's already internal stuff going on. When you say that publicly and throw your teammates under the bus publicly, then it becomes, the private turmoil becomes very public turmoil. And now all of the concerns that we had, privately, the whispers that you hear of, this guy is kind of concerned that the ball just constantly has to go through Oscar's hands. And that's the reason why the team isn't engaged, because they feel that once the ball gets inside to Oscar, that they can just tune out and just, eat a ham sandwich and start, like you're in the out, like T-ball out in the outfield, playing in the grass and playing with all the weeds and looking at butterflies and all that. Like that's what this team does out on the perimeter, because they know once the ball goes inside to Oscar, he's in no man's land anymore. It's a black hole. He'll figure it out from there. So now that those kind of private struggles and concerns are now very public, now we have like legitimate public team turmoil. And now that's how you get losses like this. That's, from a talent perspective, this should not have been close. There's a reason that Vegas, who those buildings are built for a reason, thought this was a 20-point spread in favor of the Wildcats from a talent perspective. Vegas was not accounting for how disconnected this team is internally and how, in my opinion, broken things are. I don't see a positive outlook unless they have this come to Jesus moment as a team where we go, look, we need to put all of our differences aside and we need to figure out, how to love each other and be a cohesive unit. I don't think this ever gets fixed. I think that we are on track for yet another NIT, if they even make the NIT type of situation. And that's a really sobering truth and reality, that this team is what we think it is. Like you want to think that they'll get it all together and they have the pieces on paper and this and that. But until you get the stuff between the ears fixed, nothing else matters. They cannot get things fixed if they're not engaged on the floor. And that's why everything beyond this is just, will they be engaged? If not, they won't have a chance. If they go down to Knoxville and they don't have a game-winning mindset and a winning mentality, they go in there and piss down their legs like they have every other away venue, then they're going to get dog-walked. They're going to get beat by 40 points. They're not going to have a chance, and everybody's going to make fun of them. And Kentucky will continue to be the laughing stock of college basketball until that gets fixed. Until then, everything else is a moot point.
I think, the attitude stuff, or whatever the issue is there with them not being totally engaged or with each other, like that obviously has to change. But if we're going to assume that this is some like the turmoil in the locker room has been some sort of a steady decline, and you can even point to maybe the beginning of the season where things were clicking for them, the team still wasn't very good. Losing to the Michigan State team in double overtime, like if that was when the team was kind of at one of its higher points in terms of team chemistry, like obviously I think in the Bahamas is where they kind of peaked at that moment there. But as the season has gone on, they've just gotten worse in that aspect. But the product on the court was never really that great to begin with. So even if they do get things fixed in between, up in here, I still feel like there's just so many on-court issues that need to be dealt with. We finally saw CJ Frederick get back out there tonight. They ran a couple of plays for him. He was getting some shots going, but he really hasn't been out there enough either. And it's just, you've got all these guys that still just, it doesn't seem like they fit with what Calipari wants to do or whatever he's trying to do out there. So even if they get all this mental stuff fixed, you're still going to be focusing on feeding the ball through Oscar. And clearly he's not that great at playmaking from the post. Like when he gets that second or that third double team coming on him, he just struggles with the ball. So I don't know how you fix some of those things. Damian Collins just hasn't, produced. He's in an awkward or not an awkward situation, but in a bad situation, obviously with what's happened to him. So it's hard to expect stuff out of him. And then you've got all these little minor injuries and things like that. And who knows if they're injuries or more team turmoil type things. So even if, like I keep saying, even if they get some of these things, the mental things fixed, I just don't see how the actual on-court product or the schemes of what they're running are still going to work. Because like we said, Oscar's still getting beaten pick and rolls. And Cal even talked about it last night. He said, yeah, we got to figure it out. They played 16 games. There's only 15 left in the regular season.
Over halfway through. Yes.
Over halfway through the season. If you haven't figured it out by now, and it's like the back end of the schedule is still, of the SEC schedule still is tough. Like they have Arkansas to go. Like there's not exactly, like it's a little bit easier, but there's still a lot of hard games.
Eight quad one games in those last 15.
Yeah.
I mean,
So those aren't exactly, tryout games where you can try and, change things up. I think unless Cal decides to do like just big flips, like, play Reeves and Frederick together as much as possible, maybe do more Kaysen at point and less of Xavier on the, like, however he wants to do it to try and change things up. I think that's the route they should go, but they just haven't shown and I'm obviously no head coach, that they haven't shown any willingness to change so far, it seems like. And when you've got your head coach, saying that, yeah, we know that the opposing teams are targeting our best player, and they still have no answer, that's kind of deflating to hear. And then when Oscar was even asked about it, what's happening in the ball screens, he didn't even have an answer. His answer was, I'm doing what I'm being told to do. And I guess theoretically the coaches are telling him what to do. So, who's really in the wrong here? It feels like it's probably a little bit of both. Oscar may just not be capable of defending like a lot of people would like to. And maybe Calipari and the staff just aren't putting him in positions that he needs to be as well. So it's probably a little bit of both. But with the mental stuff, I think they can fix that, because that's just a matter of, airing things out. Maybe if you want to do a team meeting or whatever, I feel like that stuff can get fixed. But I'm not a believer in any of the actual schematic stuff getting fixed.
There was a stat earlier talking about Oscar in defending in the post. In our 4 SEC games, Corey Caudill, who's been sensational, really, really good stuff that he puts out. In our 4 SEC games, when Oscar is not on the floor, opponents are converting 31.6% of their shots at the rim. While Oscar is on the floor, opponents are converting 74.6% of their shots at the rim. 3 out of 4 buckets are getting converted when Oscar is defending them in the post.
Yep.
Numbers don't lie. I mean, it is what it is. Oscar has become, and what a freaking plot twist. I mean, a guy that was the most, it's almost like this mentality that he was just such larger than life character that everybody just kind of feared him last season as this, oh man, he's the most dominant rebounder, and
which he still is.
Unstoppable force down low, and he's so physically gifted that I have no chance of stopping him. There's almost this like scared mindset that other teams had, and it's like they spent this offseason going, okay, but how good is he really at these things? Like how good of a defender is he actually? Like, yeah, he averaged 2 blocks and 3 steals a game or whatever he was, and he was a SEC Defensive Player of the Year for that reason. But when it comes to how he plays against length and the things that actually determine if he's a legit like on-ball defender, is he really any of that good? Like, and I think teams kind of started realizing that maybe that answer is no, and the proof is in the pudding when you have that. But you also have a 7-foot shot blocker on the floor, known as on the bench, known as the best shot blocker in high school basketball, and the team is struggling on the interior as bad as they are. I just don't know how Ugo gets no minutes. And even like, Adu Thero, Kaysen goes out with back spasms, and the rest of the team struggling. And Adu Thero is a gamer. Yeah, he has flaws. He's not a perfect basketball player, but he's going to come in there and compete. And that's all Kentucky needed against South Carolina. He was the perfect example to play against South Carolina. He didn't get a minute. So it's little things like that where it's like, yeah, mentality sucks. And, I think that they've checked out mentally a little bit. But yeah, like if that does happen to get fixed, as you said, there's still so many other glaring issues in terms of on-court production and who they are identity-wise that you're just like, you put your hands up in the air and you're like, I got nothing. I don't know how you can look at this team and think, there's the path. That's why this team is going to get things fixed, because nothing they've done right now thus far has proven that.
Yeah, and I think kind of touching on your point with teams aren't fearing Oscar. It's not just Oscar. Like, teams just don't fear Kentucky anymore. South Carolina came in last night thinking they could win, knowing that they could win. Like, a lot of people say, oh, they were lucky. They made a lot of long shots. They were 11 from 20 from 3. Like, they won't do that the rest of the year. Like, yeah, that's the point. Like, they weren't lucky. They were confident. Like, they were taking shots that they were like, we know Kentucky can't guard us doing these like this and this. So just take the shots. If you're there, take the shots. So that's why I don't buy into the idea that, South Carolina just kind of lucked their way into that win. Like, South Carolina outplayed them. Kentucky, I think the stat I saw, Brandon Ramsey tweet something about, South Carolina had 57 total possessions, 1.27 or something points per possession, which is just an insane, efficiency. Like, a lot of those shots were long shots that were tough shots. A lot of those were still tough shots that were open. If you like, even if they're 4 feet behind the line, and a guy like Michi Johnson, even if he is a 30% 3-point shooter, he's been shooting shots from there all year long. Eventually, they're going to start going in. And when a guy believes he's going to, this is kind of a galaxy brain take if you want, like getting into the mind of the opposing team. But when they're confident, that it's not lucky at that point. Like that's just what they were planning on doing, and they just executed the game plan essentially. And if we want to talk about luck, like Kentucky had 2 incredibly lucky shots to beat LSU. So if you want to flip the luck side there, like Kentucky should have lost to LSU in that sense. So I don't buy the luck thing that some people have kind of touted online or whatever. So yeah, just overall, there's definitely something going wrong inside the locker room, it seems, and it's bleeding into the on-court production.
Something that certainly doesn't help when rumors of your head coach taking the Texas job become very, very, very widespread and not necessarily denied in ways that you'd expect. Both sides technically did. Cal, during this call-in radio show, said that he hasn't talked to any teams. His focus is on getting this team right, blah, 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 blah. Everything you'd expect him to say in that regard. And then the Texas AD comes out, Del Conte, I believe is his name. He comes out and says almost the exact same thing, says, we have not talked to anybody right now. Our focus is on the interim coach and making sure he's in position to succeed long-term and making sure that this team is where it needs to be. So both sides deny it, but very credible report from Travis Branham. He's my guy. He's as knowledgeable and inside, knows the inside look of college basketball better than just about anybody I know. So I trust his word when he does say that conversations have happened through back channels. Not Travis, Zach, I'm starting to kind of, it's at least a conversation that we need to start having and a reality, whether you agree with it, whether you think it needs to happen right away, whatever. The end of Cal's time here, it's a conversation that needs to happen. He's not going to be here forever, even if it is the rest of this season, next season, however many past that. It's a reality that we need to face. And this is about as, big of a reality as we need to, this for the first time, I think, Zach, I feel like this is plausible. And, just your take on what, those rumors overall and just what it could mean for the program moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, I think it's definitely a realistic possibility that he goes there. He can kind of wiggle his way out of Kentucky without, UK having to siphon over tens of millions of dollars if he just kind of ups and leaves. They've got, I think I heard someone, maybe it was on the radio this morning, said that they've got a new practice facility down there too. Obviously the NIL money would be huge. Texas could throw $13 million a year at them if they want to. Why would they want to do that? I'm not sure. Like, just from Texas' perspective, that's what kind of puzzles me. Like, I understand the idea of wanting to bring in a Hall of Famer and, kind of restart from there. Obviously, he'd bring in great recruiting classes and things like that. But, is that really what do Texas fans want to kind of go through? Like, what if Calipari's probably going to bring the exact same style that he's got going down in Texas? Is that what you all want to keep running as well? So from Texas' side, it kind of confuses me as to why they'd want to pay so much money to that guy, or to a guy like Cal, when they can go get someone a lot cheaper who's younger and is probably going to bring some sort of more modernized offense. And you can probably save money that way and build it up from there. So from that perspective, it's the Texas side that really kind of doesn't make too much sense in my book. But if I'm Cal, I would probably take a long, hard look at the Texas job just because of some of the things I just said. Like, they've got the more amenities, you get a fresh relationship with the new AD. You're probably going to make a little bit more money as well. The fan base is a restart there. So if he's looking for just a fresh reset, I think that's the way for him to go. Obviously, if it happens, Kentucky's going to lose 4 of those 5 kids. That's just going to happen. I don't think we even have to question it. It happened at Memphis. It would happen here as well. So the only guy you would keep is Reed Shepherd. And then, you'd rebuild with whoever coach comes in, maybe snag another late recruit or something and work through the transfer portal, which a lot of people have argued is like, all right, well, we can rebuild through the transfer portal. If you want to keep going and getting Rhode Island kids and Illinois State kids, no offense to Antonio Reeves and Jacob Toppin, they're both really good, but they're not, exactly UK level what we have been expecting.
Would that not just be where we are right now?
Yeah, I think it would just be a lot of the roster would probably look a lot similar. It would be a lot of guys plucked from other schools. that, we're good enough there to warrant a transfer to a bigger school. And I think, if the coach is good enough and they have some sort of, different modernized, revitalized offense, maybe it can work. But I really don't think there's a win-win situation for anyone in here except maybe Cal, who would probably have the best, if he's the one that leaves, he would probably be the one that comes out, in the winning category, if you will. Whereas I think Texas and Kentucky would both kind of be the losers in that end.
Yeah, it's either going to be a lot of money or a lot of money, and a lot of support, or it just in terms of resources and things like that, and recruiting resources and things like that. It's either a lot here or a lot there. So
yeah,
I think
my big thing.
That is true. That is very true. And goodness gracious, that's exactly what we need: another football school versus basketball school debate once should he arrive at Austin.
You have to think too, in 2 years, Texas would come to Rupp. So, how would that?
Does he want that? Yeah.
He want, maybe he doesn't think about that or care about that. But boy, if he left and then had to come back in 2 years, that would be you might have to have some extra security presence at a game like that if he just up and left and, abandoned the recruiting class and things like that. I don't think that would happen. He probably would, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but he'd probably get some, a mixed, review or emotion from the crowd if he, were to go to Texas and then come back a couple years later. I'm not sure how that would kind of play out. It just all depends, I guess, on how the separation goes. If it all were to happen, I personally think he's back next year. I think, for all the reasons that we've kind of just talked about, I don't think it makes sense on a lot of people's sides other than Cal. So, if Texas decides to throw the bag, I would tell Cal to go. But if they don't, I would say stick it here and just keep, try it out one more year. You've got your, the players that ideally players that fit his system better, and guys like DJ and Rob, even if they will probably drive us crazy with those, 27% shooting nights. Those are more Cal's guys anyways. And you can see them going for 30 points on any given night and winning games by themselves like that. So it's my only situation.
So I wrote a feature literally 4 hours before tip off, before Kentucky suffered its most embarrassing SEC loss in history. And I had a lot of people, share that tweet, that article again and go, oh yeah, you're so smart, dumbass. How'd that work out for you? I get it. I totally understand that. But my point still remains. I'm okay with this reality. And I'm just making sure fans know and are accepting of this reality that every single top 100 recruit in the class of 2023 is signed. There are no, end of bench 4 stars. There's no top 60, 70 guys that you could add as okay, well, at least we can build a roster with those guys. There is nobody left available in high school basketball that you can get. The class of 2024 is effing terrible. The worst in probably a decade. It is an absolutely terrible recruiting class. So you're not going to get a reclass guy that's going to be your savior in that regard. So you can't think of that as a possibility either. So you need to live with the reality that the entire freshman recruiting class would leave. Cal would leave. You would have no other high school talent to go get. And then your entire roster would be depleted, and you would have to go hit the transfer portal to fill every single scholarship player that you have outside of Reed Sheppard. Is that a reality that are you comfortable being Kenny Payne at Louisville? It doesn't matter if you bring in the ghost of Red Auerbach. I don't care if you don't have the pieces capable of putting together a contender, then it doesn't matter who your coach is. That would be the reality that Kentucky would face. It would be at least a 1-year rebuild, and then I still wouldn't be convinced that things would just be fixed right away. Are you comfortable being the laughing stock of college basketball 2 years in a row? Are you comfortable with a Kenny Payne at Louisville reality where you have to accept that this year is what it is? We're absolute trash again, after being trash this year, being trash again next year, and then hoping that Jay Wright or Nate Oates or whoever, those guys, say you go get Nate Oates or Eric Musselman, those star talents that they have on their Alabama and Arkansas rosters right now are going pro. So are you comfortable with getting the 8th man at Arkansas or the 7th man at Alabama? Yeah, they just kicked Kentucky's ass. I get that. Now, Arkansas very well may do the same thing. But that's not going to build a contender. If those are your top of rotation guys, then that's not going to build a contender. If you're comfortable with this season being what it is, next season being just as terrible, if not worse, and then hoping that things get fixed by 2024 and the recruiting, starts picking up by there. Maybe they hit home runs. Maybe they find the perfect recipe in the transfer portal and things are glorious and all that stuff. I get that. And if that's a chance that you're willing to take, or you're comfortable with having a season as terrible as Louisville's having right now, all right, I totally support it. And that was the article, the point of that article, just saying it's a very uncomfortable reality that Kentucky could have a pretty significant rebuild ahead. Are you cool with that? I personally think that they should run it back and let Cal coach the son of his first one and done, and let the storybook finish close out the way that I think everybody is hoping for, and then figure it out from there. If you want to vet guys next season and it's last year's Cal's swan song, whatever, okay, do that. But I just don't think that the grass is 100% greener. The grass is not green right now, but I don't think it's that much brighter and luscious and beautiful on the other side as I think some Kentucky fans are expecting if they just go out and get Jay Wright and think that everything's, a magic wand is going to be waved and Kentucky's going to be back to the glory days. And so I just don't think that's a realistic reality. And if you run Cal off now, I think that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm not sure UK would ever go into the state that Louisville's in right now, because UK just invests. I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
like you're probably not going to have a 2-15 or whatever start here at UK, even if they just all hell breaks loose and things fall apart.
Say another 9-16 year, something like that, where you're clearly out of play, out of tournament contention.
Whoever they get, even though I just kind of pooped on the Rhode Island and Illinois State type transfers, if you get the best players from those teams, they're still going to come in and produce, and Kentucky will win ball games. And there's enough NIL money that they'll get some recruits, unless they go out and hire, or make, what's a former Kentucky, unless they do something dumb like Louisville did. And not to say that, Kenny Payne's a bad coach, but the only reason that Kenny Payne is the coach there is because he played at Louisville. So unless they decide to, go out and get Rajon Rondo and make him the coach, which I think people suggest for reasons I'll never understand, that's the only scenario that Kentucky would ever kind of delve into that sort of situation. So, but it would be bad for Kentucky standards. It would be, maybe a fifth or sixth or whatever you want to call it, of just, maybe even, not winning a game in the tournament or just missing the tournament entirely. So yeah, it's definitely a be careful what you wish for type thing. Obviously things are they're not going good right now. They're maybe 2 or 3 more, maybe just one more bad loss away from the season being literally over. I still think that there's ways that they can bounce back and you pick up a key win here or there over a top 25 team. I think they're going to be right back in the thick of the NCAA tournament race. But right now things are obviously not very good, but I think with the class that Cal has coming in, you're probably going to lose. I would guess you're going to lose guys like Oscar and Xavier and guys like those. So he'll have to hit the portal again and go out and find more guys to kind of fill out those roles. But the point, or the backcourt situation, is one that he's actually kind of got locked in with Rob and DJ coming in, and even Reed if you want to throw him in there. Although I think he might be more of a year 2 type guy. But yeah, so I think you got to let it play out a little bit still. I don't think you can run a guy like Cal out of town right now. And it'll happen any year with whatever class Cal has. Whenever he leaves, he's going to take all the guys with him. But I think this is a class that you definitely want him to try and play with. Like I said, the 24 class is really bad. Ian Jackson keeps going on other visits and stuff like that. So who even knows what's going on there with him? But I think you definitely got to give him one more year and then just kind of see where things go from there.
Oh yeah, it's just a reality. Are you comfortable with a reality that could lead to a multi-year rebuild? That's my only question. If you are, and if you're ready for a fresh start, I totally understand that. I'm not even faulting you if that's your mindset. I just don't want you assuming that things are going to be just, Kentucky's going to go hire, whoever.
I'm not getting Jay right.
If you go get fill in the blank, Nate Oates, just don't expect things to just be magically better next season and Kentucky going to be a title contender from year one. I just think it's an uncomfortable reality that's a really crappy timing all across the board. I don't think that long-term every top 100 recruit in America is going to be signed to open the early signing period. when's the last time we got an Andrew Wiggins or a Julius Randle press conference announcement in the spring? Those type of things. That would be something you'd be okay with, because you could at least have some time, a couple months to, make up some ground and get guys like that, or at least, top 30, top 40 kids, whoever. I don't think that's going to be permanent. I don't think every kid is going to be signing in the early signing period forever. So I just think this is a worst case timing scenario for Kentucky. And I just hope that you could get past all of that and figure it out after next season. And if maybe things get fixed by then, I don't know. I just better be careful what you wish for is all I'm saying. We got to start wrapping this thing up very quickly. Previewing Tennessee. The Volunteers are set to retire Chris Lofton's jersey in Knoxville. Do you have any hope for the Wildcats on the road?
That's brilliant trolling from Tennessee. I'll give it to them, honestly. I don't know if I'm sure they did that on purpose, but that's A1 trolling. Like, I got to give it to him, retiring Chris Lofton's jersey, because I feel like Tennessee's going to do a lot of Chris Lofton type shooting, and they might win that game by. I think we're probably in store for another Alabama type situation. A lot of it's going to depend on, is Cason Wallace okay? What's Jacob Toppin's situation? Kentucky has to have those guys. Like, that's still two of their five best players. I'll say two of the best five. You need those guys. Like, you just have to have them out there. They need to be playing at least as close to 100% as you can. And if you get maybe one of those two guys, I still don't see, like, you have to have them both for this to be a competent game, because let me tell you, they're going to attack Oscar. Tennessee's going to attack Oscar all the time. They're going to keep doing it. So I think one of the biggest things I'm just going to be looking for is, does Kentucky do anything differently? They haven't all year, so I'm not exactly they haven't made wholesale changes at least. So I'm not exactly, privy to believe that they're going to make any big changes heading into this game. I think that's just going to be going back to Oscar. And I haven't done a deep dive on Tennessee, but I don't believe they have like a big lob threat guy like Alabama did with the 7-footer. So maybe things might be a little bit easier kind of starting out the game against Tennessee. But ultimately, I really think that their crowd's going to be juiced. They know the situation here. I don't see Kentucky going in and pulling off what they did against Kansas last year. This is just a completely different, situation and team and all that. So Tennessee will probably win by a lot. I think the spread will come out and they'll be maybe a double-digit point favorite. It's not a good situation going into this game. And then you've got Georgia on Tuesday at 9 p.m. Next week in Rupp, which is going to be brutal. Not only to cover, you don't have to feel sorry for us, but just for fans that are going. I'm curious to see exactly how many fans actually show up. So, yeah, I do not have a lot of faith going into this Tennessee game.
Yeah, my thing went out. I got a call, but my bad. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Yeah, let's. I am equally as concerned as well. Definitely not overly optimistic about how things unfold down there. Just again, see it to believe it mode for sure. Let's move on. We will not be in Knoxville. We will actually be at the Hoophall Classic in Springfield, Massachusetts. Very excited for that. Zach, what are you excited to see up there? And is there a recruit or two that you're excited to see?
Well, 4 of UK's 5 signees, current signees, I guess we should start prefacing like that, with this whole Texas thing, but current signees are going to be up there. The only one that won't be there is Rob because of his OTE stuff. So even Reed will be up there with his very injured North Laurel team. I don't think that's going to end up going well for them.
Sure won't.
Because they're missing a lot of their secondary players that Reed really needs, and he's kind of just playing with a bunch of regular high school players right now. So that'll be interesting. But DJ and Aaron they'll be playing up there as well. You'll have Justin Edwards playing. We'll get I have the list right here. There's a couple of different 24 kids that'll be there. Like you've got Ian Jackson will be there. Boogie Fland, who's a guy who's been, it feels like, just shooting up the recruiting rankings of late. Those are both, 2 really big guard prospects that Kentucky's been on, and we've been able to watch them already as well. So it'll be nice to get to see them again, because it's been probably since Peach Jam, I guess, since we've really had a real good look at a lot of these kids. So with Ian Jackson and it looks like True Washington's going to be there too. Shout out to Ty Ty. So Boogie Fland and Ian Jackson will be there. You got Isaiah Elohim, Derek Queen, just a couple other guys that UK's kind of made some, small contact with. So there's a lot of really good games that are going to be on. I believe they're going to be on ESPN. A lot of things will be on Baller TV too. So if you want to shell out whatever, $10 fee they have, I would definitely suggest, because there's going to be a lot of really, really good talent up there. Jack and I will definitely be bringing a lot of recruiting coverage with, how's your commitment level with Kentucky right now. There will definitely be a lot of that. We'll kind of, see if we can get any sort of feel from the recruits as to what the coaches are kind of telling them maybe about how the season's going, and hopefully get a little bit of a different perspective and kind of see how they're viewing things from their lens. Because I'm curious, honestly, to kind of know how a guy like DJ, if they let us talk to him, or, Aaron is feeling about how things are all going down there.
Yeah, very much looking forward to that. We will be leaving Friday and back on Monday. So make sure that you are tuned in. We'll do a bunch of these either rapid reactions or, the different podcasts, whatever. We'll definitely be keeping you all updated. A lot of good stuff coming from there, Zach. Let's get the heck out of here. Where can fans find your work?
You can find me, as always, on the beautiful website called KentuckySportsRadio.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at ZGeoghegan, KSR. Geoghegan is, it's actually right here. You can see it right there. Geoghegan, Geoghegan. There's no E at the end. Steven.
You can find me on Twitter as well, at Jack Pilgrim KSR. At Jack Pilgrim KSR. Reach out to me via email at jpilgrim@KentuckySportsRadio.com. With that, we'll be back next time. A lot this weekend for another jam-packed Source to Say podcast. We will see you then.